Michael Daniels was a dreamer. A young black artist living in a cramped, noisy neighborhood on the outskirts of a bustling city, he spent most of his days immersed in the colorful world of his imagination. His studio, a small converted garage with peeling walls and a leaking roof, was his sanctuary. The smell of turpentine and acrylic paint clung to the air, a testament to the countless hours he spent pouring his soul onto canvases. Despite the hardships of his life, Michael believed that art had the power to transcend barriers and tell stories that words could never fully capture. Michael's passion for art was born in his childhood. Raised by a single mother who worked tirelessly as a nurse, Michael often found solace in sketching scenes from his vivid imagination. His mother, Angela, despite her grueling schedule, always encouraged his creativity, scraping together enough money to buy him sketchbooks and colored pencils when she could. She would often say, "The world may try to box you in, but your art will always set you free." Those words echoed in Michael's mind every time he picked up a paintbrush. As an adult, Michael's life was far from easy. While his heart longed to create art full-time, reality demanded otherwise. By day, he worked as a janitor at a local community center, cleaning floors and fixing leaky pipes. By night, he took on freelance gigs as a portrait artist, sketching quick caricatures for tourists or painting murals for small businesses. It wasn't glamorous work, but it paid enough to keep the lights on and buy supplies for his studio. The art world, however, was not kind to someone like Michael. Galleries in the city were dominated by an elite crowd, a network of wealthy curators and collectors who often overlooked the work of artists from marginalized backgrounds. Michael's attempts to enter the scene were met with closed doors and polite but dismissive emails. Rejections piled up, but Michael refused to let them extinguish his spirit. His art was a reflection of his identity. Vibrant, abstract compositions told stories of resilience, community, and the beauty of Black culture. Each piece carried layers of meaning, inspired by the struggles and triumphs of his upbringing. Despite his growing skill, Michael was often reminded of the systemic barriers that stood in his way. Some galleries claimed his work wasn't commercial enough, while others simply ignored his submissions altogether. One rainy afternoon, while scrolling through a social media page dedicated to local artists, Michael stumbled upon a post about Whitman Gallery, one of the city's most prestigious art institutions. Gerald Whitman, the gallery's owner, was infamous for his discerning eye and harsh critiques. His gallery was synonymous with wealth and exclusivity, and securing a spot on its walls was seen as the pinnacle of success for any artist. Despite Whitman's reputation as an elitist who rarely ventured outside his circle, Michael saw an opportunity. With a hopeful heart, Michael spent weeks preparing his portfolio. He carefully selected his best pieces, ensuring each one demonstrated his versatility and vision. He even saved up to have his works professionally photographed, knowing that presentation was everything in the art world. By the time he was ready, his portfolio was a masterpiece in itself, a testament to his dedication and talent. The day Michael walked into Whitman Gallery, he was greeted by opulence. Crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling, casting a warm glow over the pristine white walls adorned with artwork worth more than he made in a year. The air smelled of polished wood and expensive perfume, a stark contrast to the earthy scent of his humble studio. Dressed in his best shirt and slacks, Michael felt out of place, but held his head high. The receptionist, a young woman with an air of practiced indifference, barely looked up as Michael approached the desk. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone curt. "Yes," Michael replied, his voice steady. "I'm here to see Mr. Whitman. I have a portfolio I'd like to present." She gave him a once-over, her expression unreadable. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but..." "Mr. Whitman doesn't take walk-ins," she interrupted, her tone making it clear she thought he was wasting her time. "You can leave your portfolio, and if he's interested, someone will contact you." Michael hesitated. He had worked too hard to leave his work in someone else's hands. "I understand, but I'd really prefer to speak with him directly." "It'll only take a few minutes." The receptionist sighed, clearly annoyed. "Wait here," she said before disappearing into a back room. Several minutes later, Gerald Whitman emerged, a tall, silver-haired man in an impeccably tailored suit. His piercing blue eyes scanned Michael from head to toe, a flicker of disdain crossing his face before he forced a thin smile. "I'm Gerald Whitman," he said, his tone clipped. "You wanted to see me?" "Yes, sir," Michael said, extending his hand, which Gerald ignored. Undeterred, Michael continued, "I'm an artist, and I brought my portfolio to show you." Gerald's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Let's see it, then." Michael opened his portfolio, carefully laying out each piece on a nearby table. As Gerald flipped through the pages, his expression shifted from feigned interest to open scorn. "Interesting," he muttered, though his tone dripped with sarcasm. "Very bold." Michael could feel his heart sink, but he remained silent as Gerald continued. Finally, Gerald closed the portfolio with a dismissive snap. "I'll be honest with you," he said, folding his arms. "This isn't the kind of work we showcase here. It's unrefined, amateurish. And frankly, it's not what our clientele is looking for." Michael's jaw tightened, but he managed to stay composed. "I appreciate your feedback. But I believe my work speaks to a broader audience. It's about culture, identity." Gerald held up a hand to cut him off. "Let me stop you right there. Art is a business, young man. It's about what sells. Your work, well, it's not exactly marketable, is it? Maybe try one of those community centers or street fairs. You might have better luck there." The word stung, but what hurt even more was the condescending smirk on Gerald's face. "And if I may offer some advice," Gerald added, leaning in as if sharing a secret, "presentation matters. If you want people to take you seriously, you should consider upgrading your look." His eyes flicked dismissively over Michael's modest attire. Michael clenched his fists, biting back the urge to respond. He gathered his portfolio and straightened his shoulders. "Thank you for your time," he said, his voice steady, despite the anger simmering beneath the surface. As Michael left the gallery, Gerald's mocking laughter echoed in his ears. It was a sound he would never forget, a cruel reminder of the barriers he faced. But as he stepped out into the rain, clutching his portfolio tightly, Michael made a silent vow. He would not let Gerald's words define him. He would prove that his art had value, not just in monetary terms, but in the stories it told and the lives it touched. This moment of rejection would not be the end of his journey. It was only the beginning. The rain poured relentlessly that evening as Michael walked back to his studio, his shoulders heavy with the weight of rejection. Gerald Whitman's words echoed in his mind, each syllable cutting deeper than the last. As much as he tried to shake it off, the sting of humiliation lingered. The coldness of Gerald's condescension, the sneering dismissal of his talent, it all seemed to confirm every fear Michael had ever harbored about the art world. Was there truly a place for someone like him, someone who didn't fit into its narrow, elitist mold? For days, Michael struggled to pick up a paintbrush. He stared at blank canvases, his mind clouded with doubt. The colors that once danced so vividly in his imagination now seemed dull and lifeless. Maybe Gerald was right, Michael muttered to himself one evening, his voice heavy with resignation. Maybe I'm just fooling myself. It was during one of these low moments that his mentor, Miss Evelyn Carter, came to visit. Miss Carter was a retired art teacher who had been one of Michael's earliest supporters. She had a keen eye for talent and an unwavering belief in Michael's potential. Despite her age, she carried herself with an air of vitality, her sharp wit and warm demeanor a source of comfort to those around her. "I heard about what happened at Whitman Gallery," Miss Carter said as she entered the studio, her cane tapping softly against the floor. "Word travels fast, you know." Michael sighed, avoiding her gaze. "I don't want to talk about it." "That's too bad," she replied, settling into a chair. "Because I'm not here to let you wallow. Gerald Whitman is just one man, Michael. And one man's opinion doesn't define your worth." "But what if he's right?" Michael said, his voice cracking. "What if my art really isn't good enough?" Miss Carter leaned forward, her eyes blazing with determination. "Listen to me, child. The world is full of people who will try to tear you down, especially when you're different. But greatness doesn't come from seeking their approval. It comes from staying true to who you are, no matter what they say. Her words struck a chord deep within Michael. Over the next few days, his friends rallied around him, refusing to let him give up. They reminded him of why he had started painting in the first place, not for recognition or wealth, but for the love of storytelling and the desire to share his perspective with the world. Slowly but surely, Michael found his way back to the canvas. He poured his frustrations, his hopes, and his defiance into his work, creating pieces that were more raw and powerful than anything he had ever done before. His paintings became a visual diary of his journey, each one a testament to his resilience. Several weeks later, Michael was invited to showcase his work at a local art fair. It was a modest event held in a community park, far removed from the glitz and glamour of Whitman Gallery. Despite his lingering doubts, Michael decided to participate, encouraged by Miss Carter and his friends. "You never know who might see your work," Miss Carter had said, her smile full of knowing wisdom. The day of the fair was sunny and bright, a stark contrast to the stormy clouds that had hung over Michael's spirit for so long. He set up his booth with care, arranging his paintings and sketches in a way that highlighted their vibrant energy. As visitors strolled through the fair, many paused to admire his work, their compliments lifting his spirits. Among the crowd was Clara Levine, an internationally renowned art collector known for her keen eye and her passion for discovering emerging talent. Clara was visiting the city on a whim, having heard about the fair from a friend. She wandered through the rows of booths, her sharp gaze scanning for something that would catch her attention. When she reached Michael's booth, she stopped in her tracks. His paintings, bursting with color and emotion, seemed to radiate an energy that drew her in. Each piece told a story, a raw and unapologetic narrative of culture, struggle, and triumph. Clara was mesmerized. "Excuse me," she said, approaching Michael with a warm smile. "Are you the artist behind these works?" Michael, caught off guard, nodded. "Yes, ma'am. My name's Michael Daniels." "Well, Michael," Clara said, extending her hand, "you've got something extraordinary here. Your work is unlike anything I've seen in a long time." Michael shook her hand, his heart racing. "Thank you. That means a lot." Clara spent nearly an hour at his booth, asking questions about his process, his inspirations, and his journey. The more she learned about Michael, the more convinced she became that he was a hidden gem waiting to shine. By the end of their conversation, Clara made an offer that left Michael speechless. "I'd like to represent you," she said. "Your work deserves to be seen on a global scale, and I can help make that happen." What followed was nothing short of a whirlwind. Under Clara's guidance, Michael's career skyrocketed. She arranged for his paintings to be featured in galleries across Europe and Asia, where they were met with critical acclaim. Collectors clamored to purchase his work, driving up prices to unprecedented levels. Articles about Michael appeared in major art magazines, praising his unique style and powerful storytelling. One of his pieces, an abstract depiction of resilience and unity, sold at an international auction for a staggering sum. The buyer? None other than Gerald Whitman, though he was completely unaware of the artist's identity at the time. When Gerald learned the truth, when he realized that the artist he had dismissed so cruelly was now a rising star whose work he had unwittingly purchased, he was stunned. He stared at the painting hanging in his office, the vibrant colors mocking him with their brilliance. How had he failed to see the talent before him? How had he allowed his own biases to blind him to greatness? Meanwhile, Michael was thriving. For the first time in his life, he felt seen, valued, and respected. But as his fame grew, he never forgot the people who had supported him when no one else did. He continued to create art that honored his roots and gave back to his community, determined to pave the way for others who faced the same obstacles he had overcome. The once dismissed artist had become a force to be reckoned with, and the world was finally paying attention. Gerald's regret was just one chapter in Michael's story, a reminder that true talent cannot be ignored, no matter how hard some may try to suppress it. The news hit Gerald Whitman like a bolt of lightning. It had started innocently enough, a casual conversation with one of his high-profile clients about the painting that now hung prominently in his private collection. The piece, a mesmerizing blend of bold colors and abstract imagery, had become something of a personal favorite, even earning compliments from his most discerning patrons. But as the conversation continued, the client dropped a name that made Gerald freeze mid-sip of his coffee. Michael Daniels, the client said with a knowing smile. The artist is a sensation right now. I'm surprised you managed to snag one of his early works. Gerald nearly choked. I beg your pardon? Who did you say painted it? Michael Daniels. His story is remarkable, rose from nothing to become one of the most sought-after artists of our time. People are paying millions for his pieces at auctions. Gerald's heart sank. He couldn't believe what he was hearing. Could it really be the same Michael Daniels? The young man he had so cruelly dismissed at his gallery not so long ago? The name and style matched, but the idea seemed too far-fetched. Yet, the thought gnawed at him, so much so that he retreated to his office that evening to conduct some research. As Gerald scrolled through article after article, his worst fear was confirmed. There was no mistaking it, Michael Daniels, the celebrated artist gracing the covers of magazines and headlining international exhibitions, was indeed the same young man he had ridiculed and dismissed. The humiliation was unbearable. How had he failed to see the talent standing before him? How had he let his arrogance and prejudice cloud his judgment? For weeks, Gerald avoided discussing Michael, though the artist's name seemed to be everywhere. He tried to console himself with the thought that he owned one of Michael's early works, but the knowledge that it had been an accidental purchase offered little solace. His ego, once unshakable, was now battered and bruised. Meanwhile, Michael's career continued to soar. His art was celebrated not just for its aesthetic appeal, but also for its depth and authenticity. Collectors from around the world clamored to own his work, and high-profile galleries competed for the chance to host his exhibitions. Despite his success, Michael remained grounded, using his platform to uplift other underrepresented artists and advocate for inclusivity in the art world. One day, Michael's agent approached him with an intriguing proposition. Whitman Gallery is up for sale, she said, handing him a brochure. Apparently, Gerald Whitman is looking to retire and is open to selling the gallery to the right buyer. Michael's eyebrows shot up. Whitman Gallery? Gerald Whitman? That's the one, she confirmed. It's a prestigious space, and acquiring it would solidify your influence in the art world. Are you interested? Michael didn't hesitate. I want to meet with him. The meeting was scheduled for a crisp autumn morning. Gerald, oblivious to the identity of the prospective buyer, prepared for the encounter with his usual air of superiority. He had no doubt that whoever was interested in purchasing his gallery would be a wealthy, well-connected individual eager to bask in the glory of Whitman Gallery's reputation. When Michael arrived, dressed in a tailored suit that exuded confidence and sophistication, Gerald didn't recognize him at first. He greeted Michael with a polite but detached smile, extending a hand. Good morning. I'm Gerald Whitman. Michael shook his hand firmly. Michael Daniels. It's a pleasure to meet you. The name hung in the air, like a thunderclap. Gerald's smile faltered, his eyes widening as he took a closer look at Michael. The recognition hit him like a freight train, and for a moment, he was rendered speechless. You, Gerald began, his voice shaky. You're the artist you met a while back, Michael finished smoothly, his expression unreadable. The one whose work you called unrefined and amateurish. Gerald's face turned a deep shade of red. He stammered, struggling to find the right words. I had no idea. Michael held up a hand, cutting him off. Let's set the past aside for now. I'm here to discuss the future of this gallery. The two men sat down in Gerald's opulent office, the tension in the room palpable. As Michael outlined his vision for the gallery, transforming it into an inclusive space that celebrated diverse voices, Gerald listened in stunned silence. The confident, articulate man before him was a far cry from the young artist he had dismissed so cruelly. It was clear that Michael was no longer seeking validation, he was here to take charge. Your proposal is impressive, Gerald admitted begrudgingly. But why this gallery? With your success, you could start fresh, build your own institution. Michael met his gaze, his expression calm but resolute. Because this gallery represents everything that's wrong with the art world: elitism, exclusivity, and a lack of representation. I want to change that. And what better place to start than here? Gerald couldn't argue with that. Despite his pride, he knew that Michael's vision was compelling. The younger man's passion and determination were undeniable, and Gerald found himself feeling a rare pang of humility. When the deal was finalized, Michael arranged for a private meeting with Gerald. As they stood in the now empty gallery, Michael turned to the older man. I wanted to thank you, he said, his tone sincere. Gerald blinked in surprise. Thank me? For what? For teaching me an important lesson, Michael replied. You reminded me that the world is full of people who will doubt you, dismiss you, and try to define your worth. But those voices only have power if you let them. I didn't let yours. Gerald's throat tightened. He wanted to apologize, to explain, but the words felt hollow. Instead, he simply nodded, his expression heavy with regret. Michael continued, I hope this experience has taught you something as well. Talent doesn't always come packaged the way you expect. And greatness doesn't need your permission to exist. With that, Michael extended his hand. This time, Gerald took it, his grip firm but humble. Good luck, Michael, he said quietly. I believe this gallery will be in good hands. As Michael left the gallery that day, he felt a sense of closure. The man who had once tried to diminish him was now a footnote in his story, a reminder of how far he had come. And as he new owner of Whitman Gallery, Michael was ready to rewrite the narrative, one brushstroke at a time. The acquisition of Whitman Gallery sent shockwaves through the art world. It wasn't just the news of the sale that captured attention but the identity of the buyer, Michael Daniels, a once dismissed artist who had risen to international acclaim. The symbolism of Michael purchasing the very gallery that had shunned him wasn't lost on anyone. For Michael, however, the purchase was never about revenge. It was about transformation and creating a space that could redefine what the art world stood for. A vision for change. Michael stood in the middle of the now empty gallery, the walls stripped of their former grandeur. The ornate frames and ostentatious decor were gone, replaced by the echoes of possibility. To many, Whitman Gallery had been a fortress of exclusivity, a place where only the elite could tread. Michael envisioned something entirely different, a gallery that would be a sanctuary for underrepresented artists, a beacon of hope for those who had been overlooked. The rebranding process began almost immediately. Michael renamed the space the Collective Canvas, a title that symbolized unity and collaboration. He recruited a team of curators who shared his vision, individuals passionate about showcasing diverse talent and telling stories that had long been silenced. The gallery's new mission was clear: to uplift voices from marginalized communities and celebrate the richness of their perspectives. Gerald's attempt at redemption. Amid the flurry of activity, Gerald Whitman requested a private meeting with Michael. It had been weeks since the sale was finalized, and Gerald had been struggling with the weight of his actions. While his ego had initially resisted the idea, he couldn't ignore the nagging sense of regret. He wanted to apologize, though he wasn't sure how. When Gerald arrived at the gallery, he was struck by how different it felt. Gone were the cold, sterile walls that once displayed only the most marketable pieces. In their place were works that radiated life, each one a testament to resilience and individuality. It was a stark reminder of what the gallery had lacked during his tenure. Michael, Gerald began hesitantly as he approached the younger man. Thank you for agreeing to see me. Michael, who was reviewing blueprints with his team, gestured for them to give the two men some privacy. Of course, he said, his tone neutral. What can I do for you? Gerald shifted uncomfortably, his polished demeanor faltering. I wanted to address how I treated you when we first met. I was wrong to dismiss you the way I did. I underestimated you, and I let my biases cloud my judgment. Michael raised an eyebrow, his expression unreadable. That's true, he said simply. Gerald flinched at the bluntness, but pressed on. I know an apology can't undo the harm I caused, but I hope you'll believe me when I say I regret my actions. Seeing what you've accomplished has been humbling. Michael regarded Gerald for a long moment before speaking. I appreciate the apology, he said finally. But this isn't about you and me anymore. It's about creating something bigger than both of us. Gerald nodded, his shoulders sagging with relief. You've done something remarkable here, Michael. You've turned this gallery into something meaningful. I admire that. Michael's lips quirked in a faint smile. It's not about admiration, Gerald. It's about impact. I want this gallery to be a place where no artist ever feels the way I did that day. Transformation and inclusion. Under Michael's leadership, the collective canvas became a hub of creativity and innovation. The inaugural exhibition, titled Unveiled Voices, featured work from a diverse array of artists, many of whom were making their gallery debut. The opening night was a resounding success, drawing crowds from all walks of life. Art enthusiasts, collectors, and members of the local community mingled together, united by their shared appreciation for the stories told through the artwork. The gallery's transformation went beyond aesthetics. Michael implemented initiatives to support emerging artists, including mentorship programs, workshops, and grants. He partnered with local schools to introduce art education to underserved communities, ensuring that the next generation of creators had the tools and encouragement they needed to thrive. One of the most striking changes was the gallery's accessibility. Admission fees were eliminated, replaced by a donation-based system that allowed visitors to contribute what they could. The gallery also hosted regular community nights, where local residents could showcase their work, fostering a sense of ownership and pride. A mentor and a trailblazer. As Michael's influence grew, so did his responsibilities. He became a mentor to countless budding artists, offering guidance and support to those navigating the challenges of the art world. He shared his own experiences, candidly discussing the barriers he had faced and the lessons he had learned along the way. One of his ments, a young painter named Amara, described Michael as a beacon of hope. He doesn't just talk about change, she said in an interview. He embodies it. He's proof that success doesn't have to come at the expense of your values. Michael's impact extended beyond the gallery walls. He began advocating for systemic changes within the art industry, calling for greater representation and accountability from major institutions. His efforts earned him accolades and recognition, but Michael remained focused on his mission. For him, success wasn't about fame or fortune, it was about creating opportunities for others to shine. Gerald's quiet admiration. Gerald, now retired, watched Michael's journey from the sidelines. While he had once prided himself on being a tastemaker in the art world, he now recognized the limitations of his vision. Michael's approach, centered on inclusivity, empathy, and authenticity, was a stark contrast to the exclusivity that had defined Gerald's tenure. And yet, it was undeniably effective. One evening, Gerald attended a lecture Michael was giving at a nearby university. He sat quietly in the back of the auditorium, listening as Michael spoke passionately about the transformative power of art. As the audience gave Michael a standing ovation, Gerald felt a mix of emotions, regret for his past actions, but also genuine admiration for the man Michael had become. After the lecture, Gerald approached Michael, who was greeting attendees. "You've done extraordinary things, Michael," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You've built something far greater than I ever could." Michael looked at him for a moment before extending his hand. "It's never too late to change, Gerald," he said. "We all have the capacity to grow." A legacy redefined. As the collective canvas continued to flourish, Michael's legacy became a testament to the power of resilience and the importance of challenging the status quo. His journey was a reminder that greatness often comes from the most unexpected places, and that true success lies in lifting others as you rise. In the years to come, Michael's gallery would inspire countless other institutions to adopt similar models, proving that the art world could be both inclusive and profitable. And while Gerald's chapter in this story had ended, his quiet transformation stood as a reminder of the impact that humility and reflection could have. For Michael, justice had never been about revenge. It had been about proving, through action, that the world could be a better place when everyone had a chance to contribute their voice to the collective canvas. A legacy of empowerment. The grand opening of the collective canvas was a momentous occasion. The once exclusive Whitman Gallery had been completely transformed, its walls now brimming with vibrant artwork that told stories of resilience, culture, and individuality. The city buzzed with anticipation as art lovers, journalists, and community members gathered to witness the debut of Michael Daniels' revolutionary vision. A red carpet stretched across the gallery's entrance, but the atmosphere was far from elitist. Instead of the stiff formality that had once defined the space, there was an air of warmth and excitement. Street performers entertained the growing crowd, food trucks served dishes from various cultures, and local musicians filled the air with lively melodies. It was a celebration of diversity, creativity, and community, a reflection of everything Michael stood for. The grand opening. Inside the gallery, Michael stood surrounded by his team, his heart swelling with pride as he looked around. Each room had been meticulously curated to showcase the work of underrepresented artists, from painters and sculptors to digital creators and photographers. The inaugural exhibition, Unveiled Voices, was a stunning collection of pieces that explored themes of identity, struggle, and hope. The main event was a panel discussion featuring some of the showcased artists, moderated by Michael himself. The room filled quickly, attendees eager to hear from the minds behind the artwork. Among the panelists was Amara, a young painter who had once doubted her ability to break into the art world. "When I first met Michael," Amara began, her voice steady but emotional, "I was on the verge of giving up. I felt like my work didn't matter, like there wasn't a place for someone like me in this industry. But Michael saw something in me that I couldn't see in myself. He gave me a chance, and that chance changed everything." The audience erupted into applause, and Michael smiled, humbled by her words. Each testimonial was a reminder of why he had fought so hard to bring his vision to life. It wasn't just about creating art, it was about creating opportunities, breaking down barriers, and challenging a system that had excluded so many for far too long. A journey revisited. As the night progressed, Michael found himself reflecting on his journey. The gallery had arranged a special feature, a timeline of his life, displayed in one of the rooms. Visitors walked through his story, beginning with sketches from his childhood and photographs of his humble garage studio. The timeline highlighted key moments of struggle and triumph, his rejection from Whitman Gallery, his chance encounter with Clara Levine, and the meteoric rise that followed. Michael paused in front of a painting from his early days, one he had created shortly after Gerald Whitman's dismissal. The piece was raw, filled with frustration and determination. Seeing it now, alongside his later works, was a stark reminder of how far he had come. But more importantly, it was a reminder of the countless people who had supported him along the way, his mother, Miss Carter, Clara, and the friends who had refused to let him give up. Media coverage and spotlight. The opening night garnered significant media attention. Journalists flocked to interview Michael and the featured artists, eager to capture the essence of the collective canvas. Headlines celebrated Michael's success, but they also delved into the systemic challenges faced by Black artists and the broader need for change in the art world. One reporter asked Michael, "What does this moment mean to you?" Michael paused, choosing his words carefully. "This isn't just a celebration of my journey, it's a celebration of everyone who has ever felt unseen, unheard, or undervalued. It's proof that talent and creativity don't belong to a single class or race or background. They belong to everyone. My hope is that this gallery inspires others to embrace that truth and to keep pushing for inclusivity in all spaces." The room broke into applause, and Michael couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. The message was spreading, and the world was finally listening. A moment of humility. As the evening drew to a close, Michael was approached by someone he hadn't expected to see, Gerald Whitman. Dressed in a simple suit, the former gallery owner looked more subdued than Michael had ever seen him. Gerald held out a hand, his expression sincere. "Michael," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "I just wanted to say congratulations. What you've done here is extraordinary." Michael shook his hand, studying the older man. "Thank you, Gerald," he replied, his tone measured. "It means a lot that you came tonight." Gerald hesitated before continuing. "I've been thinking a lot about our first meeting. About how wrong I was, not just about you, but about what this gallery could be. Seeing it now, seeing the life and energy you brought to it, I can't help but feel humbled. And inspired." Michael nodded, his gaze softening. "It's never too late to grow, Gerald. The important thing is that you're here now, recognizing what this space can be. That matters." Gerald's eyes glistened with emotion as he stepped back, offering a small but genuine smile. "Thank you for giving it a purpose I never could." The power of perseverance. As the crowd began to thin and the night came to an end, Michael stood in the gallery's main hall, taking in the scene. The once exclusive space was now filled with laughter, conversation, and inspiration. It was no longer a fortress of elitism, but a welcoming haven for all. Michael's thoughts turned to the future. There was still so much work to be done, so many voices to uplift and stories to tell. But for the first time in his life, he felt truly at peace. He had turned his pain into purpose, his rejection into redemption. And in doing so, he had built something far greater than a gallery, he had built a legacy. In a quiet moment, as he gazed at the walls adorned with the work of countless talented artists, Michael whispered the words his mother had once told him: "The world may try to box you in, but your art will always set you free." And now, through the collective canvas, that freedom was being shared with the world.